Shaima stood in front of the sink, in the elegant kitchen of a fancy Southern California home. Elbow deep in soapy dishwater, she began to wash the dishes, scrubbing off bits of food before carefully rinsing them under the faucet. When she was done rinsing and drying, she stood on a chair to put the dishes away. Now this all seems like a normal day of chores for an average 16-year-old girl. Doing the dishes before watching television or before getting on Facebook to see what Amber said about Rachel and Johnny. You know, the typical high school melodrama. I can't believe that they are still together. I mean, Rachel doesn't even have nice legs. Johnny could do much better. He could do me. But that's just it. You see, this is not the usual story. In fact, the drama of high school is something far from Shaima's mind. Facebook is just a word she's heard whispered around the house as she tends to the dishes or dusts or vacuums. And television is an alternate reality, one she only sees in passing glimpses. High school, far from being stressful, would be a welcomed blessing for her. 16 years ago, Shaima was born in Alexandria, Egypt, more than 12,000 miles away from California. The oldest of 10 siblings, sharing a small one-bathroom house with 3 other families. When she was 8 years old, her father lost his unstable and low-paying job, and her family fell on even harder times. Feeling desperate to save all of her children and herself, Shaima's mother sold her to a man named Abdel Nasser Ibrahim for the price of $45 a month. $45 a month. The price for her own daughter. At the time, she believed that she was doing what was best for Shaima as well. She would have new clothes and 3 square meals a day and many other things that her own mother could never offer her. But soon afterward, Ibrahim and his wife decided to move to America. And now, 8 years later, she is here. A first world, modern-day slave in a first world, modern-day country. So how does this happen? Not just to Shaima, but to thousands of others who are trafficked every year from places like Africa, China, Mexico, and even Europe. According to the Office of the Attorney General, human trafficking is the single largest and fastest growing criminal industry in the world today, creating billions of dollars in revenue while sacrificing 800,000 lives a year to do so. There is virtually no country and on any continent that is not facing this rising crisis. The fact is, there are more slaves in the world today than there have been at any other point in history. And that is a big statement, especially when you consider the history of slavery. Slavery has existed on this world from the very beginning of human recorded history. In ancient Rome, slaves were forced into monumental colosseums to fight trained soldiers, lions, tigers, and even each other. Even the Great Wall of China was built on the backs and literally the bodies of slaves. And finally, as if by some ironic twist, the country that claimed to set men free would have to fight one of the bloodiest wars in history just to end legal slavery within its borders. Now, some 150 years later, slavery is making a comeback. People around the world have rediscovered the profitability of slavery. And in a new world of economic interdependence, that profitability is paired with a new and global marketplace. Increased demand and increased supply mean higher profits and more incentive. And while the basic premise remains the same, one thing has changed. It isn't just about labor anymore. In her book, Human Trafficking, Human Suffering, Dr. Alexis Aronowitz estimates that up to 80% of all the victims of human trafficking are forced into prostitution. According to the most recent United Nations census, there are over 21 million slaves in the world today. If you take 80% of that number, then you get 16.8 million people who will never again know what it is like to be normal. Another article written by Newsmax magazine estimates that up to 80% of that 16.8 million people consist of young girls between the ages of 6 and 24 years old. One more simple math problem, and that's 13.4 million young girls who have had their lives and their innocence stolen from them. So how is it that in this room we can sit here knowing all this and still refuse to do anything? If each one of us has a voice, then each one of us must speak out. For if we refuse to become part of the solution, then we continue to be part of the problem. For he who does not condemn evil commands it to be done. More shocking still is that this is not a problem stemming from third world countries. This is a problem that has some of its largest marketplaces in Western Europe and the United States. Human trafficking is here in North America, here in the richest country on earth, and so are its victims. Now they could be anyone and they could be anywhere. Members of your congregations, your friends, even your neighbors or classmates, sitting in the first pew and wondering if anybody knew. And they are brothers and sisters and sons and daughters, and every single day they are being beaten and starved, drugged and raped, made to service up to 20 clients a day. So I ask again, how is it that in this generation we can refuse to address this issue? How dare we turn our eyes away from the hurt and crying children in other countries and in our own towns and communities? How dare we ignore this genocide of innocence? And how dare we call ourselves decent men and decent women if we do? That peculiar institution is now spanning every international border and growing rapidly. So how do we stop it? The majority of human trafficking occurs directly beneath our noses. It is for this reason that we must increase the education on this subject. 9 months ago, if you were to ask me what human trafficking was, I might have squirmed uneasily with a confused look on my face and had absolutely no answer for you. But I had to do this project for AP English, and at the time, this seemed like a very accessible subject. What I didn't know then was that this was going to become extremely important to me. We must erase the kind of indifference I showed back then if we are to ever effectively combat this issue. We have to take that attitude and abolish it, replacing it with a kind of understanding that allows us to truly care about these victims. And when we can do that, when that kind of compassion takes place and we can eliminate that kind of indifference, then it is infinitely more difficult for this industry to thrive. We cannot win a fight against the ghost enemy. And we cannot hope to be effective in a fight against an enemy that we cannot even see. And so it is key that we understand that our enemy is indifference. But what is more important is understanding that each and every one of us are soldiers on the side of the right, and so that each and every one of us must understand this issue. We must always remember that the only thing needed for evil to succeed in this world is for us good men and for us good women to do nothing. For us good men and women to leave Shaima in the shadows. Ours has become a generation drenched in hatred. But I believe we can fight it. And when we do, I believe we can win. I believe that this generation, our generation, will see the rebirth of all peoples as free men and free women. But it starts in this room when we decide that we will not remain silent.